Welcome to the James Rice Show, a humorous, entertaining, and sometimes thought-provoking look at teaching and studying abroad. Join the conversation as James guides you through his experiences and provides insights into how to improve your English and how to improve your teaching of English. And now, here's the man you've been waiting for, James Rice.
Coming up in this week's episode, education agents, why you need them, and how to find a good one. Plus, education agent associations and why they are important to you. And it is 2020, the year of the rat. What does that mean for you? All coming up on The James Rice Show. Welcome, my students and fellow educators. Welcome to this week's James Rice Show, and I'm very pleased to be bringing you the show, our first show in 2020. I am James, broadcasting here from Toronto, Canada, with our lovely producer, Stephanie. Thank you very much for tuning in this week, and as you know, I am the author and series creator of the Study It ESL textbooks, and I was a language school owner for over or close to 20 years, and I've been in this industry for many, many years. And this week we're talking about education agents that help you, the student, study abroad. And this is very important as they are kind of the middlemen between schools and students. And they will help you with your visa, with your flight tickets, with medical insurance perhaps. But mostly they have visited many, many different schools. And usually the good agents try to match you up with the school that best matches your personality, or at least that is the goal. And we're going to be welcoming Miss Vivien Tse to the show a little bit later. What she does is she's an education consultant. She helps schools recruit you. So she's often working with schools and working with education agents. And that is going to be a fascinating interview with Vivien. So you want to stay tuned to watch and listen to that. It's 2020, so my brain is still stuck in 2019. So you're going to have to bear with me as we get through our first episode. I've had a nice long holiday. How about you guys? Hope you had a great holiday and a safe holiday. Many of you contacted me and wished me all the best in 2020, so thank you very much. And I had a special shout out to a teacher in Saga, Japan, who is listening on his CarPlay. He sent a Facebook message, and I just want to say thank you for that message, and I'm glad you're listening in to the James Rice Show. Now, what led me to this topic of education agents is a scandal. You know, we had many scandals last year, but a scandal that occurred with a company called EduBoston, and a gentleman there who was recruiting students from China. What he was doing essentially was he was registering the students in the school. He was collecting the money from the families, and then he was not paying the schools. So students were still getting their visas, and it was a large company. So there was a lot of trust there, but he was keeping the money, according to the police, and he wasn't paying the school. So there was a huge controversy in the USA regarding this. And, you know, education agents in general here in Canada often, when education agents are selling to students, they're often making promises that are not always true, especially when it comes to work permits and work visas. It is not so easy to get a work permit in Canada, despite what agents may tell you. And that sometimes leads to students coming to Canada thinking they're going to be able to find a job easily, which is also very difficult to do in North America and in any country. You need to have some skill, but agents often make those promises. And students come to Canada here in my country, and they're often surprised, disappointed, perhaps angry. So you want to be careful. But, in 20 years that I've been in this industry, generally speaking, I have met nothing but good education agents. The ones that pop up in the media are the bad ones, obviously. And, generally the people who I have met, they have studied abroad, they've lived abroad, and they're excited to share their experience with their country. They know the value. They want to bring that experience back to their country. They want to share it with you. They want you to have an opportunity like they had when they studied abroad and lived abroad. And oftentimes they want to open the doors for you, the students. And that's the great thing about most education agents that I have met. Now, so I don't want you to be scared. I don't want you to be scared of education agents, and I don't want you to be scared of the bad news and sometimes the bad media that education agents, you often hear about education agents. But I do want you to be careful, okay? I want you to be careful as students with education agents when choosing an education agent. Now, how do you find a good education agent? Well, one way is through education agent associations. So there are special groups that good agents will join. And you can find these agents, and I've made a link in our description, our podcast description, and you can click on that link to find. But there are, many of our listeners are from Brazil. The Education Association in Brazil is BELTA, BELTA. You can Google that, and they have a list of agents that you can contact, and they represent a variety of agents, and they will guide you on, finding the best agent for your situation. At least you can verify if your agent is registered with BELTA. So that is important to check. Or in Japan, there's JAOS, JAOS. In Turkey, there's TEAG, TEAG. There's also two very large associations. One is called ALTO, ALTO, and one is called FELCA, FELCA, FELCA. And those two are very, very large associations, and many quality agents will join one or two of these agencies. It could be their local association. It could be a global or international association. Now, in China, there's also an association called COSA, COSSA, or BOSA, BOSSA. So China Overseas Association, or Beijing Overseas, BOSA, COSA or BOSA. So those two for China that you can check and find out. So again, I want you to be careful. These associations will help you. And if you do have a bad situation and you find yourself in a bad situation, you need to report your agent or even the school to these associations. I know some of you go out on the social media and you try to say bad things about your school on social media, but it's just not good. I don't believe in that type of doxing of schools. There are issues that happen. There are issues that happen between schools and students, and there's always two sides to every story. But if you do have a problem, going to the association, talking to them, and trying to help get your situation resolved, because schools and agents take those associations and being involved in those associations very, very seriously. And any complaints registered are often investigated on your behalf. So use the associations for information and use the education associations for protection as well. So students, those two ways will help you choose the best education agent. And we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to have Vivien Tse on here, and she's going to talk a little bit about her experience and how you can find a good education agent. Coming up next.
Hi, James Rice students. It's me, Caramund, Miss America 2018. Now, learning a second language is never easy. It can be difficult and it's sometimes frustrating, but I want you to keep listening to Teacher James and keep working hard. Never give up.
The Study It textbooks are the first ever completely digital and interactive English as a second language textbook series. Once downloaded, these textbooks do not require a Wi-Fi connection. Students and teachers can use them anywhere, anytime. Used in over 40 schools, universities, and NGOs worldwide. Study It is the future of English teaching. Visit www.studyitbooks.com for more information.
We would like to welcome Miss Vivien Tse, a marketing and sales expert in the field of education, to our show today. Welcome, Vivien.
Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me to this podcast, James.
Vivien works with schools and education agents to help recruit you, the students, to study overseas. So, Vivien, maybe tell us a little bit about what are education agents?
Right. Education agents is kind of the middle person between the school and the students. So, for example, some schools would like to recruit students from countries like India, Pakistan, or even China or Latin America, basically any parts of the world, to their school. And they want some local expertise in these different countries so that they could help them recruit the students to those schools. The agents could operate in two ways, mainly. Number one is that the student does not have to pay anything to these education agents, and the school in return will pay them a certain percentage of the tuition fee so that the education agents will kind of get reimbursed for their efforts. The second way is the education agent might charge a fee upfront because they put in a lot of work in it and things like that. And sometimes it's also a combination between the commission plus the fixed commission from the school and a fixed fee from the student. And that's the second way. So there's two ways how these education agents work.
So with the internet nowadays and students they're able to go online and find schools themselves, what are the benefits of using an education agent? Can't students just do everything by themselves?
Right. So from my experience working with agents around the world is that some students prefer, in fact, some countries have students that prefer using education agents, and some countries are more favor like the use of internet instead. So there's two ways. And the people who use education agents are the ones that are maybe from places that don't know much about the other country. For example, if that country doesn't, for example, if I'm from China, for example, and I want to study in Canada and I don't know much about Canada, and I don't know which school to go to, I don't know which area I should study in, then using an education agent would help, because they can help you navigate that process and help you sift down all those schools to maybe 3 schools, and then you can make the choice of which school to go to. Whereas if you're not working with an education agent, then you would have to go to the internet and then research so much. There's more than 200 institutions, let's say in the US, and you don't know which one to go to. Where should you go? Using an education agent helps you cut down time in that application process and school selection.
And, in Canada here and North America in general, we don't have education agents that send our North American students abroad to other countries. Why does this industry exist, I guess, is my question.
So why does the education agent industry exist?
Yeah.
Okay. So like I mentioned before, is that I realized that in some countries, students are more biased towards working with education agents, and some are more biased towards working by looking for schools on the internet. And for example, in Canada, there's not a lot of education agents because a lot of Western countries, what I notice is that a lot of Western countries, they use the internet themselves. They're very proficient in using the internet, in looking for those schools. And they usually look for the schools themselves. They don't usually like go out and find another education agent. And for these Western countries, such as Canada and like other places in North America, their English is very good. And English is a pretty international language. And if they use the internet and then go out to look for a school and they need to communicate with the admissions office at the school, they can just use their English. Whereas some non-Western countries, such as Asia, the parents and the students might not have such good English. So they would prefer using an education agent as their kind of middle person to help them look for these kind of opportunities.
And I think also education agents have offices sometimes set up in the countries that they work with. So if there is an education agent in China, they may have an office or a sub-office in America or in England or in the UK and the New Zealand, for example.
Yes, there are these kind of offices. The interesting is that there's a trend right now is, for example, I've spoken to a few Canadian institutions, and they're not just recruiting students, they're not just recruiting international students from, let's say, China, but they're trying to recruit international students who are already studying in Canada. So the benefit of that is these students have already attained the visa. And if they have attained the visa, it means that they have met most of the immigration departments or the visa department's requirements. Whereas if they recruit international students from overseas, they might be very rich. They might say that they can study at a Canadian institution, but they might not be able to get that visa. If they can't get the visa, the student won't be able to study at the university. If they can't study at the university, then the school doesn't get any money, doesn't get any tuition fee from that.
So I guess the biggest benefit for using an agent, one of the biggest benefits would be to help with the visa.
Yes, that's also like one of the huge things.
And is there a system for training these agents to help students with a visa? So I'm wondering, if I'm a student looking for an education agent, I want to find an agent that will kind of guarantee me, as best they can, a visa. So is there any training for overseas agents on how to help students get a visa?
So training for schools or training
for the education agent?
Right. So unfortunately for visa-wise, there's not a lot of training out there. There's training for the agents from ISEF, right? ISEF is a huge organization which qualifies the agents. The agents have to pass through the ISEF examination before they can get the certification. And it's not a very easy exam. And there's not a huge visa component in that. And the second thing is, even if there were such kind of training, the visa processes change very frequently. If we're talking about Canada right now, different places, different cities might have different kind of visa application processes, and they're often updated. So for these agents to have that kind of knowledge, they would actually need to stay up to date. And I would suggest them to actually follow the Canadian government on these student visa processes and see what updates they have, whether it's more favorable, more unfavorable. Whereas on the student side, if they wanted to recognize if the agent can guarantee the visa application process, there's basically no guarantee, right? But one of the telltale signs of knowing whether the agent has a lot of knowledge in the visa application process is that if they're has more history, if they've been established for a long time, then they have that kind of experience of whether that kind of visa, whether that student would be able to apply for a visa successfully. For example, even on the Canadian government, right, websites and things like that, or even other countries, they say that the proof of income, the sources of income, has to be from a credible source, right? But they didn't say it clearly. What do you mean by credible source? So there's some kind of ambiguity to the things that are written on those websites and what the government says. And when the agent has more experience, when they have more students, they know that what works and what doesn't. So having more history and also staying up to date with those kind of visa processes is what makes those agents more successful in applying for visas for those students.
So you've identified two key points that parents and students should look for. One is if they have been trained by ICEF, usually they have a little logo stamp or some sort of signature that they have passed this exam, which is a kind of an agency examination. And then the other is how long the agency has been in existence. It shows a certain level of professionalism and success. But are there any other ways that students and parents can recognize that this is a good education agent and this is one they should avoid?
Mm-hmm. So looking with reviews, just like, for example, buying something on Amazon, it would be like looking for reviews of that agent. A lot of times, these, for example, ISF agents, they have Facebook pages, and they could go there and look at the reviews. They can also check the Google reviews. The third thing they could try is to see if their friends have some recommendations, or even their friend who is already studying overseas and they recommend an agent and they said, oh, they have a perfect experience working with them, then that would be a good agent. So word of mouth and also the reviews online. So those are some of the ways that they can research.
And I would also recommend students to always contact the schools directly. If you are working with an education agent and you may not feel comfortable, contact the school directly and say, does this agent work with you? Is it a good agency? What do you think about that?
Yes, I think definitely, because sometimes there's a lot of bad agents out there, to be honest. There's I think ISEF has more than the qualified agents is I think less than 2,000 of them, but in the world there's more than 5,000, 6,000 agents. So only around maybe 20% of them are good ones. The other 80% are bad ones. So
and often that's caused because there is no legal qualification to be an agent. Anybody could just be an agent, correct?
Exactly. And in those countries, right, a lot of countries in the world, they don't have any requirements on that.
So that's one thing parents and students need to be aware of. The other thing would be to talk with agent associations. There's a number of different associations and school associations. So if you don't want to contact the school directly, there are a number of agent associations in your country. For example, in Brazil, there is BELTA, BELTA. They're an association of education agents, and they support students and agents, and I guess they do some quality assessments as well, correct?
Yes.
So that would be a great great way just to verify if you've got a good agency. Now, what are some of the issues that are facing students and agents when they're dealing with schools? So sometimes there's issues between schools and agents as well as students in schools. What are those issues that are currently popping up?
Mhm. Do you mean students who apply through the agents or students who apply directly to the schools?
I would say students applying through agents.
Right. Okay. So I'll start with um, the issues regarding agents dealing with schools, right? So when agents are dealing with schools, what agents usually find is that because like a lot of institutions are from Western countries or other countries, and there's a difference in culture. For example, the agent might be in China, and then the school might be in Canada. So they're from different places and they have different cultures. And sometimes agents want to ask for more information about the school. And the school is not as quick to respond because in Canada, maybe we expect to respond an email like within 24 hours, and that's very reasonable. But in China, they expect you to respond within 3 hours, right? So
Wow, really?
yes, and different countries are very different as well. And like I've even met an agent in India. He expected us to respond within an hour. If we don't respond, then the agent would say, okay, feel that you're not trying to maintain a good relationship with them. The agent would try to send the student to another school. And then the school loses out a lot because of these little things.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't disagree with that. And also, sometimes schools demand a lot of money up front, which perhaps makes parents and students a little nervous. Would you agree with that?
Yes, definitely. That's one of the that's one of the things that keeps coming up. But I also understand that on the school's side is you don't want to receive all these student applications from the agents and give them the offers and the student applies to somewhere else. So I understand that some schools would want to charge to make sure that the student is legitimate and the student really has the will to study there.
Yeah,
But if it's too
absolutely.
high, then it doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think students, you have to understand the school's position is that, yeah, there are a lot of students, and do you have the funds or the money to travel abroad? Because oftentimes, if you can't pay the tuition fees, then you're probably not going to get a visa. Would you agree?
Exactly. Exactly.
So that's kind of what the schools are. So if agents are asking for a lot of money to be paid to the school, it is because that's what the schools are demanding. And you should expect that when you walk in to meet with an education agent. Now, would you recommend students to pay the education agent directly, or would you recommend that they pay the school directly?
You mean even if they're applying through the agents, right?
Correct. Yes.
Mm, I think it really depends on whether it's a good agent or not. So I think the vetting of the agent is a very important process. If they're a good agent, then fine. Like it doesn't matter if they pay the agent directly or pay the school directly.
And I think that's an important point right there. If you ask your agent, "Can I pay the school directly?" and the agent says that's fine, you probably have a good agent. You know,
Mm.
wouldn't you
Yeah,
agree?
yeah.
If
Sometimes
they're
I think
saying, "No, no, you must pay me, you must pay me," you
yeah,
may want to worry about that. Good
yeah.
agents will
That's a little
understand.
scary.
Good agents will understand if you want to pay the school, if you're a bit
Yeah,
nervous.
yeah, and sometimes the schools, but on the other hand, like sometimes schools might want the agent to handle everything. right? So I think at least if it's a good agent, they would allow the student to talk to the school about it,
Exactly. Yeah. Don't
right?
exactly. That's another good point. Don't be afraid to say, I'd like to speak to the school directly. If it's a good agency, they will introduce you to the school and say, hey, James, this is Vivian. She's interested. Can you answer her questions?
Yes,
That is what a good agent will do, students. All right. Now,
yes.
how about if we flip it? How should schools work with agents to ensure that the information given to students is correct? Because one complaint that students always say is, my agent never told me this, or I didn't hear this from my agent. And schools often get frustrated by that fact, that why the agent is not explaining all of the details to the student. So what should schools do to make sure that that information being given out to students is correct?
Right. So I think like one of the things is that I think there's two scenarios. One is that the agent is not familiar enough with the information, with the school's information, then there's something for the school to do. And then there's also the other side is that there's a lot of bad agents out there that they know what the fact is, but they choose to lie because they know that they would get that student. For example, in Canada, there's a lot of private career colleges, which is a huge issue right now. Is the agents say that these career colleges provide work visa or post-study work visa. But the fact is they don't. But they tell the students that they can get the work visa after graduation. And that's not true. But because students are so attracted by the fact that they could work in Canada after the program, they pay all that money to come here. And then after they study for a while, they get angry at the school for not telling them that they actually don't get any work visas. And that's a huge issue. But these are some bad agents. There's actually a lot of bad agents out there.
Well,
So
that is quite dangerous. Yes.
yes. Like they get angry at the school and then wants the refund. And then the student doesn't look closely enough at the application form, that there's no refund, and it's just wasted time and money.
So how do we solve this issue where we have these unscrupulous agents out there deceiving, lying to students, obviously to try to, get their business? How do we stop that?
You mean the schools or the students?
The industry in general, I guess.
The industry in general, how to stop these agents from doing that?
Because it's not good business for the good agents, and it's not good business for the good schools if they have these guys selling lies to people.
Yes, definitely. For schools, I think it's very important to work with good agents as well. Sometimes schools will feel that an agent actually approaches them and wants to sign a contract with them and wants to represent the school, and the school is like, oh yeah, more agents is better. But that's not true. More good agents is better, but if your number of agents is just very high and then some of them are bad agents, it's just going to waste a lot of resources by the school. So to avoid these kind of cheating agents, the school has to pick the agent very carefully and even go through a due diligence process, check if they have the qualifications, check if they are a reputable company, use Google reviews, Facebook reviews, go online, search, ask around, and see if that agent is credible or not. So that's how the schools can prevent that problem from happening.
And I think that one thing schools can do, and students, you should be aware of this, is that schools should be visiting the countries that they're working in. So if they're working in China, if they're working in India, if they're working in Vietnam, they should visit those countries, they should get a sense of who the agents are, take a look at their offices, meet their counselors, and do some on-site training. I think that is kind of the base level that all schools should be encouraging their recruiters to do.
Yes, I think definitely. Like besides all the things I talked about, this one like that you just mentioned, I think it's also about having that kind of personal touch, because like you meet an agent and you talk to them, and then you know that whether they are knowledgeable, you know that whether they are credible, whether they are trustworthy. Like after talking to them, you can actually understand more about those kind of intangible things.
Absolutely. So that fascinating information. Now, what led you to joining the education industry, Vivien?
Yes, I actually started as an accountant at Deloitte.
Oh.
And yeah, and after a year, I wanted to see something that I wanted to do something that I can see results more quickly. So I joined the education industry as a teacher. So I was an ESL teacher actually. And I later moved more into education marketing because I realized that if I really wanted to help students, there's a lot of teachers in the industry, but their professionalism is in teaching. They're not trained in business. Whereas from my background, having that Deloitte experience and having my degree also in accounting and finance, that helps me in merging those two things together, education and also marketing and sales. So that's how I ended up here.
Fascinating. Well, congratulations, and I hope you continue to enjoy and helping students study abroad. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much, James.
Have you subscribed to James's newsletter? When you subscribe, you will receive a free Study It ESL textbook. Visit www.thejamesriceshow.com for more information and join today.
All right, my students, so it is 2020, and in the Chinese horoscope, they have 12 animals, and the animal for this year is the year of the rat. Yeah, specifically the metal rat. I'm not sure what the difference is, but anyways, they call it the year of the metal rat. So what does that mean for you? All right, well, let's take a look. The metal rat year is going to be a strong, prosperous, and lucky year for almost all people. Wow, we're all going to get rich. We're all going to win, as Donald Trump says. You're going to be so tired of winning, you're going to hate him. But maybe there's other reasons why we hate Donald Trump. But anyways, I digress. Everyone will show determination for their goals and their aspirations and their hobbies. And it is a great year for evolving and for starting a new business, for investing money in a long-term project. All of that, it's going to be a great year. But beware, you must plan carefully to make these successful. So it's kind of like, because it is the beginning of a new decade. So 2020 is a new decade, the decade of the 20, the roaring 20s. Yes, the roaring 20s. The 1920s were nicknamed the roaring 20s because everybody made a lot of money until the stock market crashed in 1929, and then the 30s led us into World War. But 1920s, it was a roaring 20s. And according to the year of the rat, 2020 is going to be another decade of roaring success for everybody. Lots of winning. All right, Stephanie, let's move on to our top 10 listeners for the last week. Listeners to the James Rice Show, if you haven't caught our New Year's special that we released around New Year's Eve there, please do. That was a great show. We had some great guests. Miss Universe Oscar Mendrazo was on the show. The Crazy Russian Dad, he was on as well. And Jun Lee from Korea was on as well, the comedian. So our top 10 listeners, let's go through it. We do have a new number one. What, Stephanie? We have a new number one country. Let's hear that number one country music. All right, our new number one country is Japan. Welcome back, Japan. I guess you guys are all on holiday over there. You're in your New Year's holiday, so you're listening to The James Rice Show. Good job. That's what I like from my Japanese listeners. Arigatou gozaimasu. Yes. USA, number 2. Also, you guys are on holiday. Mexico, number 3. Brazil, number 4. What happened, Brazil? You guys dropped down. You guys are usually my number 1. You dropped down to number 4. What happened, Brazil? Obviously, Brazilians were enjoying their New Year's holiday and not listening to the James Rice Show. Canada, number 5. UK, number 6. France, number 7. Israel, number 8. Iraq. What? Iraq in our top 10? Number 9, Stephanie? Really? Wow, that's fascinating. And number 10 is Spain. All right, so welcome to Iraq and to some new top 10 countries there. Thank you guys for tuning in to the James Rice Show. It is a great pleasure to always bring you a new episode every Monday. And Thursday is Teacher Talk, and Saturday we have the English lesson. So please do not forget, new episodes Monday, Thursday Teacher Talk, Saturday English lessons. And I hope you guys will have a great 2020, and please remember to be crazy.
Thanks for listening to The James Rice Show. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter and send us your questions or comments at www.thejamesriceshow.com.